Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Connor Sheldon. Some of you might not have seen me before. I'm with an organization called Spark Strategic Solutions. Would just like to say welcome. I'll be leading some of our conversation topics today. Some of you on this call are familiar, so thank you for being here. And we will get started in just one more minute. A couple more people are joining us. This is being recorded. If you could please put your organization and your name in the Zoom chat feature, that would be great. Myself and my colleague Adrian have not met all of you, so it just helps us understand a little bit better who all is on the call today. We'll get started in just a minute. Awesome. We will get started knowing others might join us. Thank you, those of you who are putting your information in the chat. Much appreciated. Cool to see some new names, new people. Cool to see some people I recognize, Melinda, Ashley, Dan, and Adrian. If you could please share your screen, we can go ahead and get started. Again, my name is Connor Sheldon. I am with Spark Strategic Solutions. I'm here today to present the strategic action plan that was developed over a couple of months with some Idaho ecosystem partners, leaders, and also to share some information about implementation planning. I do not anticipate we will take the full hour today. If at any point you have a question, please put it in the chat. John from Idaho STEM Action Center is helping to monitor the chat. I am also happy to answer and respond to questions as they come up. Adrian, next slide, please. The couple things we'll talk about, I'll just do a brief introduction about our organization. I would like to talk about where Spark has been with the Idaho ecosystem so far in developing that strategic action plan, as well as where we are going with implementation planning. You build a plan, but how does it get completed? And then we also have a little bit of information about next steps and some time for questions from everyone on this call. Next slide, please, Adrian. A little bit about Spark. I'll go through this so it's not too cumbersome, but Spark is a local Idaho-based company. And next slide, please, Adrian. We are here to build harmonious and co-creative communities. We've worked with individuals, leaders, really in almost every single Idaho county. In part, we work to make sure people feel a sense of belonging and connection, can access community capital to support their well-being, and so that individuals can recognize the personal power and opportunity to improve humanity. Next slide, please. Above all else, we're guides. That's really how we are helping support the Idaho ecosystem. A lot of the institutional knowledge, a lot of the information, the strengths exist in you, the people on this call. And we're just helping to guide how information is shared, how it's collected, how it is organized to advance the Idaho ecosystem. Next slide, please. And we believe to build thriving communities, you need to see the whole system. I don't know if I need to get into that too much with this group, knowing that ecosystems are systems. We believe in leading with convening power. How do people come together really to have the most impact? Ensuring balanced representation. How are we including those who might know about STEM as well as those who don't know about STEM yet? And we like to use data to drive action. And next, I'll share who is on the Spark team helping the Idaho ecosystem currently. Adrian, my fearless colleague, is on with us today. He's doing all the technical support, as well as going to be helping me with any questions that might come up. My other coworker, Christina, is helping lead this work. She's not on the call today, but just want to let you know there is a team helping some of this work that the Idaho ecosystem is doing. And the last piece about the organization Spark Strategic Solutions, that's where we all work. We really like to spark big ideas, but we know when big ideas are sparked, there also needs to be a plan as well as action in order to activate those big ideas. And that is really, I think, why we were invited to support the Idaho ecosystem and take the group that has been in progress for several years to even more progress. And next slide, please, Adrian. I just want to share a quick overview of the Idaho ecosystem as we have seen it, as we know about it. Next slide, please. The Idaho ecosystem is not necessarily brand new. It started a couple years ago. One thing we heard during the 2022 convening in Lewiston, Idaho, is there's a continued need for some direction, for some clarification of roles, responsibilities, having a shared language, and some of that is all in progress. I did want to make sure to note the mission of the Idaho ecosystem to foster the integration of STEM experiences for Idahoans, creating problem solvers and critical thinkers who will lead and sustain our economy, has been really consistent. It's been the same since the beginning of the Idaho ecosystem, which first launched in 2020, just before many things happened that year. In 2021, there was a governance board created. There was a virtual convening in the spring. Working groups were meeting, were gaining some momentum. And then the 3 hub coordinators joined the team at different stages at different times. But Dan, thank you for leading the Swish hub. Ashley, I know you're on the call today, leading the IC hub, and then Susan leading the INNC hub up north. And so far in 2022, if you've attended these monthly webinars, you are hearing about some of that place-based impactful work that is happening in the hubs. I think it's really important to highlight there is great momentum. There's great interest in STEM in Idaho in particular, and that place-based work is where much of these occurrences, much of the exposure is happening. There has been hub growth in programming. There's a transition, some of you might have seen this or experienced it. There was a transition from the governance team that was started in 2021, that governance board, to a leadership team. And I can talk a little bit more about that shortly. There was the spring convening in Lewiston. Adrian and my colleague Christina attended that in person. She might have met some of you. And over the course of several months, Christina, Adrian, and I worked with a newly formed leadership team to develop a strategic action plan. And that was done by Zoom over the course of several meetings. And now what we are working on, why we are invited back to the Idaho ecosystem, is to take that strategic action plan and put it into individual steps for action. And we will be partnering with you between September last month through February 2023. Next slide, please, Adrian. I wanted to show you, and this is available to you by email after this call. It will be rebranded without the Spark branding, but I wanted to show you some of the slides that the leadership team co-created between the months of May through August. Next slide, please, Adrian. The first one is these meeting norms. Some of these might look familiar if you attended the convenings, but really wanted to build some norms, some shared language around the Idaho ecosystem. So meeting norms that we have going forward and that have existed previously. We participate as equals with shared responsibility for the outcomes. We communicate openly, honestly, and respectfully. We listen as allies. We stick to the agenda. We have no hidden disagreements or questions. If we disagree, we do so with grace and tact. We help each other learn. We show up on time and prepared. I think these are tremendous meeting norms, a way for us to all have a consistent way that we attend and approach Idaho ecosystem work. Would just like to thank you all for being here today, Friday over lunch. Grateful for your participation. Next slide, please, Adrian. The Idaho ecosystem vision. This was, again, something we want to highlight. The mission and vision of the Idaho ecosystem have maintained pretty consistent. This vision was adapted a little bit by that leadership team to become a little bit more concrete. The vision of the Idaho ecosystem is dedicated partners collaborate to coordinate STEM experiences and opportunities in Idaho. This is what we are aiming to do. This is what success would really look like. Partners collaborating and coordinating around STEM experiences. Exciting work, and I think there's a lot underway so far. and we'll get into a few more opportunities to have more impact. Next slide, please, Adrian. The leadership team and part of the strategic placemat, the strategic plan, is to build some guiding principles. And again, this might be the first time you are seeing some of this. It will be emailed to you. This is content that has been approved by that leadership team, agreed on as well. Our guiding principles: reinforce existing activities by avoiding duplication, ensuring balanced representation. And this, I think, is a pretty impactful statement. Prioritize inclusion of individuals who are furthest from STEM in Idaho, and promote access and opportunity for all Idaho STEM voices and partners. This statement, I think, is important to pause on for just a minute, because the Idaho ecosystem is not just trying to partner with those who know about STEM. The Idaho ecosystem is also wanting to invite those who might not be familiar with STEM to participate. And I think that is a tremendous opportunity and tremendous cause. Our third guiding principle: we lead with connection. Ecosystems are networks of connection. And so one of the guiding principles of the Idaho ecosystem is to lead with connection. The Idaho ecosystem will engage the whole system. There's a lot of sectors at work. We'll talk about those in a moment as well. How do they all coordinate? Use data to drive action. This is a way that we can use information to make decisions and continue to improve. And then one that I think just helps us target all our efforts: we want to ground in joy. Joyfully and inclusively advance STEM access and opportunities in Idaho. And I see some items in the chat. If you have any questions, John is monitoring the chat, and some of this documentation is available for you already online. If you need it popped up on your screen, there's a link in the chat for you to see that as well. I believe the access is on the far right in a little box on the far right of that screen. And next screen, please, Adrian. The Idaho ecosystem has quite a few different components. In, again, trying to focus on shared language, norming around content and objectives, we wanted to talk about an accountability structure. Who are the participants? Who are our partners to advance the Idaho ecosystem? And the first one is the Idaho ecosystem as a whole. All of you on this call are part of that Idaho ecosystem. The Idaho ecosystem is a group of partners that work together to support STEM learning and workforce development in all Idaho communities to ensure a prosperous future. We are all working together. You will see on here, there's some new work groups you might not have heard about before, but maybe you have some interest in joining them. Some work groups we will be building over the coming months and would really appreciate your participation, voluntary participation. An infrastructure work group. How does the Idaho ecosystem work? What are the bylaws? What are some of the structural things? A communications work group, thinking back to our guiding principles. How are we coordinating communication efforts? A capacity work group. How do we take what exists and amplify it? And a STEM experiences work group. How are we building structures in order to help all the STEM experiences that do exist become accessible? Next, there's a leadership team. And this leadership team was formed back in May. It may adjust, it might change. I'll share with you who was on the leadership team and helped to develop some of this content. There is a leadership team. It will probably change. Just want to position that. The leadership team is a cohesive team that provides direction and decisions for the Idaho ecosystem. The leadership team is representative of Idaho STEM voices. We know that not every voice is included on that leadership team yet. If we included every voice, the team might become a little bit too big, but we are working our hardest to make sure the leadership team includes those STEM voices. We also have the regional hubs led out by Ashley, Susan, and Dan. These are community partners that support the development of strategic implementation plans by designing solutions to enhance regional STEM landscapes, thinking about that place-based work, place-based efforts, place-based investment. And then we have the Idaho STEM Action Center, and abbreviated here as STEM AC. The Idaho STEM Action Center serves as the backbone organization and provides operational support and fiscal sponsorship for the Idaho ecosystem. You will see that the Idaho ecosystem leadership team and regional hubs are really going to be leading out the Idaho ecosystem as a whole. The Idaho STEM Action Center is absolutely there as a support, but much of the work the Idaho ecosystem will be doing is going to be led out, driven, and sustained by individuals on this call, as well as some individuals who might not be with us today. And because that was a lot of words on that slide, Adrian, could you go to the next one, please? This is a bit more of a visual for what we think that accountability structure looks like. And we have been told, you know, this seems really cyclical, one direction, maybe, but using a gears analogy, we know that each gear can operate independently. The Idaho STEM Action Center is doing a lot of work. The leadership team is still being created. Some of those structural elements are being built. The work groups, hopefully we get to build some of those today. And then the regional hubs are operating. They have been in motion for a little while. And we see that while each gear operates independently, they also should all operate cohesively in order to drive STEM experiences in our traditional and non-traditional settings, such as libraries, K-12 schools, industry, higher education, as well as different community events. So just a visual to try and encapsulate that very wordy slide that was shown previously. Adrian, if you could go to the next slide, please. This slide shows who was on that leadership team. This is who Adrian, myself, Christina worked with between May through August of this year to develop the strategic action plan. And I will show you that momentarily. This is a core group. Some of the individuals will adjust. If you think that someone is missing from this group who needs to be on it, please send a message to myself. I'll share my email at the very end. But this group is one that is being built as we progress in making decisions for the Idaho ecosystem. The hub coordinators, I would like to point out, are one of our great assets. They are doing place-based work. They know their communities they are working in. Additionally, the Idaho STEM Action Center, Erica and John are now really helping with this leadership team as well. They are in the know of everything that is happening with the Idaho ecosystem. Next slide, please, Adrian. This is a beautiful, I hope, placemat of what we try and build here at Spark. Everything I just shared previously is included in this one slide. And this might seem a little bit crazy, and I know the font is really small on your screen, but this is really our North Star. This is our elevator pitch for when we are talking about the Idaho ecosystem in our communities, with other partners, potentially with industry that exists around the state. When individuals want to know about the Idaho ecosystem, we have our vision, our mission, our priority audiences, all packaged in one place. If there's a question as to what is the Idaho ecosystem doing, that middle column that says strategic objectives and key results is our plan of action for the next 1 to 2 years. I think we've learned as an organization at Spark that we can build strategic plans for 5 or 10 years. But sometimes when we build those plans, they aren't really sustained because 5 or 10 year timeframes, there's a lot that can happen. This placemat is again built for 1 to 2 years. What are we going to focus on? And objective 1 is formalizing the Idaho ecosystem structure. Objective 2 is aligning communications. And I think screen share might have stopped so I can share mine.
I think we lost Adrian.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Well, let me share mine, you guys. Sorry about that. And I promise I will be done talking shortly. But these are some of our strategic objectives. These are our focus areas for the next couple of years. aligning communication efforts, convening partners to build capacity and continued investment in STEM pathways, and coordinating existing STEM experiences. This is a document. There's a lot of information on it. It will be available to you on the website, and I am happy to email it to you after this call as well. But for those of you that might be seeing this for the first time, are there any initial thoughts, questions before we go on to what some of the next steps look like? I can open my chat.
Aaron just asked about being able to receive a copy of this, and you addressed that, so that I think we're good there.
Perfect. Yep. Got a copy. Erica and the Idaho STEM Action Center team works to get this on the website as well, so you can access it. This can be emailed out following this call as well. And I will pass over to Adrian to share his screen. Thank you, Adrian, for rejoining. I would like to talk a little bit about where we're going. Great, we have a strategic action plan. It's all on this one piece of paper, but now what? So what Spark is doing and how we hope to support the Idaho ecosystem is through implementation planning. We have a strategy. How are we moving to action? And there's a couple things I would like to share. There's already momentum. If you could go to the next slide, please, Adrian. This is something we shared with the Idaho Ecosystem leadership team. You saw some of those names a couple minutes ago. These were our recommended next steps after building that strategic action plan. The first one was to transfer all the information to an Idaho ecosystem PowerPoint that is in progress. We would like to have the leadership team meet monthly. That is also in progress. The leadership team last met on September 22nd. We wanted to communicate this plan to the larger Idaho ecosystem. That is what we are doing today. And while this might be the first time you've seen it, maybe you took a minute to look at it on the website, there's still an opportunity to engage in a dialogue. We'll have an opportunity for some questions in a few minutes. The things we're going to be working on together over the coming months: one, develop the implementation plan. How does that strategy get put into action? We also will be building out new work groups in order to act on some of those strategic items. And then we always want to monitor progress and adjust course as needed. Times change, priorities might shift. How are we monitoring what the Idaho ecosystem is doing so that there's continued momentum, continued impact? Next slide, please, Adrian. The process, the implementation process that we lead as Spark Strategic Solutions, we've done this with a couple of statewide organizations. We work with a core leadership group, and that leadership group helps to define work groups, members, priorities. The leadership team also helps to prioritize implementation strategies. And what I mean by that is, rather than trying to say, we're going to fly to the moon tomorrow, how do we prioritize some small wins, some things that continue to help the Idaho ecosystem build a sustainable future, really to have some impact locally as well as statewide? How are we prioritizing small wins for big impact? We also work with work groups. So these are groups that we plan to convene monthly by Zoom, and work group is named aptly because we hope to use those meeting times to do work. It's not necessarily just an update. This call is a bit more of an update call, but we hope to use those work group times as a time to complete work, to plan for work, and to move the Idaho ecosystem forward. And as you can see, those last two boxes on the right, the work groups really are going to be executing the implementation plan. And there will be constant updates between those work groups back to the Idaho ecosystem leadership team, so that information is shared and things can be happening concurrently. Next slide, please, Adrian. Some roles that we hope individuals on this call will play and others who might not be with us today, they are welcome to join. There's the leadership team. This again, in a little bit of flux, but we had a great group who helped to build that strategic action plan. They help set the overall direction regarding deliverables and expectations. They facilitate some of that systems level collaboration. There's quite a few different statewide representatives on that leadership team, from the State Department of Education to the State Board of Education to some of our workforce development individuals in the state. And the leadership team also ensures that work meets ultimate objectives. Then you have the backbone support. That includes the Idaho STEM Action Center, as well as Spark Strategic Solutions. Christina, Adrian, and myself are all here to help make sure the implementation planning process goes smoothly. We have some tools we can bring from work we've done previously, especially regarding statewide progress and programs. In the backbone support, we will work to manage day-to-day activities. We will track implementation milestones and deliverables. We have a beautiful template that has been created to help do that. We help to create transparency on progress. Because we are supporting each work group, we can really be that central communicator and help with consistent communications. And we also support all the work groups as needed. And that might look a little bit different depending on what work groups are working on, but it can include creating agendas, preparing materials, being facilitators, as well as tracking and reporting progress at the beginning. And then the Idaho ecosystem work groups. Again, I hope some of you volunteer and are excited to participate on these work groups. Develop detailed implementation plans and execute. A lot of the work groups the Idaho ecosystem had previously have been retired. I believe there's one work group that is still in progress with educators, but we're introducing some new work groups. Some of these will last for a while. Some of the work groups, like the infrastructure work group, might just be a short work group. And once the infrastructure is built, then that work group will retire. But these work groups will also translate that strategic plan into detailed milestones and deliverables. The work groups will collaborate to remove barriers for implementing the work, and the work groups will coordinate with the backbone support in Spark. And our team is helping to ensure that collaboration. Adrian, next slide, please. This might look very colorful, and it is, but it is all color coordinated, which I think is helpful. The blue is the leadership team. The leadership team is going to plan to meet monthly. They're usually 45 to an hour-minute meetings, meet monthly, make decisions, prioritize, and delegate work out. Backbone support in Spark. So the Idaho STEM Action Center in our team, we meet bi-weekly. So there's continued progress being made in the background to support the Idaho ecosystem. And then the work groups, there's 4 of them: infrastructure, communications, capacity, and STEM experiences. We hope to start planning to, or we hope to meet monthly starting in October. And some of these meetings, we need to make sure they are prioritized around the holiday season, of course. Additionally, a lot of these meeting times, if you are curious, we do anticipate they will be around the 3:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, just to make sure that if you are an educator, it is after the school day. This is really our engagement plan. The dates are not finalized yet. This is what we hope the next 4 months will look like. And a lot of this is using our time wisely in meetings so that there is sustained engagement as well as movement rather than just updates. And Adrian, if you could go to 2 slides forward, please. You might be sitting there asking, all right, you showed me a strategic action plan, talked a little bit about implementation. What's next? Why do you need me? Well, we really need you, specifically for the work groups. If you have any interest in participating on a work group, there are 4 of them. I can share those again. But if you're interested in participating on a work group because it aligns with some of the work you are currently doing, because it aligns with some of your strengths, or if it's just something of interest to you, please send me an email. We're hoping to get those work groups started within the next 2 weeks so that the strategic action plan can start to get some movement and not just be our beautiful piece of paper. And Adrian, if you could go to the next slide as well. Another thing I wanted to just put on your calendar, give a shout out. The Idaho Ecosystem Spring Convening is scheduled for March 30th through 31st next year. If this isn't on your calendar yet, please put it on your calendar. The implementation plan and the work we do over the coming months will only enhance this spring convening. And I think some of the information, some of the lessons learned, some of the things that the implementation plan will complete will probably be shared at this spring convening as well. So just wanted to make sure this is on the calendar. And Ashley did just share, we'd love to see you all at the convening. So hopefully you can make it. And with that, I will stop talking. Adrian, could you go back to slide 21, please? If there are any questions about the implementation process or the strategic action plan, feel free to put the little emoji of raising your hand or come off mute, and we have time for some discussion. Hi, Lori. Thanks for raising your hand. How can we help you?
Hi, Connor. I have a question about the work groups and, the relationship of leadership team and work groups and then the regional hubs, because as you can imagine, all the same people will be in all the same things. And so how do you see that defining itself as far as if somebody were to look at what they were going to do, where would they be most helpful? How would you decide? Should a person be on a work group? Should they be more active in the regional hub? We'd all like everybody to be active in everything. But what would be your thoughts on that?
I love that question. It is very welcome. I first like to position each of our hub coordinators will be helping lead one of those work groups. In part, that is so there is consistent communication and less duplication. So even if you're not on a work group, you might not have time or capacity, some of the work group efforts will come back through the hubs because of the hub coordinator participation and leadership of those work groups. I would say the work groups, the leadership team, regional hubs, I know there's a lot happening. I think it is about focused energy. If you are already a huge contributor to your regional hub, I would say, in order to stay on the good side of Ashley, Dan, and Susan, keep contributing to your regional hub. And if there's additional things you think you can provide insight on, even if it's just an email, hey, these are all the things we know that could build capacity for the Idaho ecosystem. Feel free to send that to us. Always CC the hub coordinators as appropriate. A little bit of an ambiguous answer, but would just encourage you focus your time where you think it is best spent. If that's the regional hubs, tremendous. If you think you could really contribute to that work group, if there's a specific one that aligns with your interests, your strengths, contribute as you're able, but definitely want to recognize and appreciate a lot of this is volunteer work and want to make sure your time is protected and really valued. Any other questions from anyone? That's really all the content Adrian and I had today. I know Dan, you're on the call. If you have any insights or information, you've really been part of this process since May when we started building that strategic action plan. Ashley, I'd call on you, but looks like you're on the move.
Yeah, and thanks for that, Connor, and thanks for the presentation today. I just want to reinforce your answer to the previous question is we're really looking for strong engagement in these leadership work groups, because that'll really feed the work of the ecosystem going forward. The hubs are doing great regionalized work, but in terms of building out the ecosystem as its own entity, we really see this leadership group and the work groups coming out of it as the next step forward to really helping create that definition for us and creating the path forward as a cohesive organization. And so, yeah, I would really just put the call out if one of those work group topics piqued your interest or speaks to a skill set that you have, please put yourself forward. I know that we've been asking for a lot of engagement throughout all of these groups, but I think defining these work groups and the action steps coming out of there, and luckily we have the great expertise of Spark to really help facilitate that process going forward, so we can really hit the ground running. I think a lot of work, pre-work has been done to build up to the successful launch of these groups. And so I know we're all excited for the potential of this and the direction of where we're going. And yeah, just really grateful to have Spark on board to help facilitate the process going forward. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. We are happy and excited to be here. And Melinda, I was going to call on you. You must have known it, mostly because I recognize you. But how can we help you?
What I wanted to ask is, since you've recorded this, can we show this recording to our hubs? Because I think a lot of people aren't necessarily on here today, and this is a good way to get them engaged.
Absolutely. And I might, Teresa, correct me if I'm wrong, but these webinars are available on the Idaho Ecosystem website. We can put that link into the chat for you momentarily. I think it might be about a week probably before this is published, but yes, it is available. And there's also, I can share the full PowerPoint. It will be branded a little bit differently, and that is shareable. I think one of the best things to share is probably that strategic action plan placemat, because that shares, here's our mission, vision, what we are committed to doing. And of course, we always recognize that things can change and the strategic action plan can be adjusted as needed.
Great,
and John
thank you.
just put in the chat that link. It can be
Okay.
emailed out after this call as well.
Yeah, I'm finding it sometimes, rather than just pointing them to a link, us actually taking the time to show them some of these things gets more visibility that way. So thanks.
Love that. And thanks for working with your local teams there.
And we used your template. I think our hub did to do our own strategic action plan. And we really appreciate your process. It worked really well for us as well. So thank you.
Love that. It is 12:40. I don't have any other information to share right now, but would really ask if you are interested in one of those work groups. Just going to plug that one more time. Email me, put it in the chat. If you want to share your email, maybe send a personal message in the chat and I can add you to one of those work groups. But apart from that, I think that is all we have today. This webinar will be posted on the website in the coming week. The strategic action plan placemat is available on the website. And I can also work with Teresa and John to make sure the full PowerPoint gets emailed to everyone. But other than that, would wish you a very happy Friday and looking forward to seeing many of you again soon.
Thank you for everything, Connor.
Thank you, Melinda.